to play on Saturday.
Who?
Whole six, the guy that got scored the goal.
That was a solid win.
Yeah. We're good to go. Okay.
I'm just upset.
Gonna go ahead and call the Dresden regular meeting to order at 7:03. We're gonna first start out with a public hearing. Friends of Hanover Norwich School donation. Does someone want to speak to that? So,
Can speak to my half?
okay.
Okay. The most recent round of Friends of Hanover Norwich School grants. I got RMS for 2 grants, one for flexible seating for our 6th grade English class. Jen Haynes has moved to the 6th grade this year, and as she put it, she noticed that 6th graders are more mobile than 8th graders and perhaps need some help channeling that mobility as they're sitting in class. So the students did a fair amount of research and picked out a number of different things that they would like in the classroom to sort of help them in their focus and also be able to sit and read. So we have a number of different seating options that are coming for Jen. Emma Haddon is our 8th grade English teacher who has been going back and forth between 7th and 8th grade. And bouncing around and has not always been full-time. So she's trying to build a classroom library so that students are she's able to put a book in a student's hand when they need it during that time. We've noticed, especially in 8th grade, we've moved away from double English. So the time to go to the library, find a book, and come back eats up a fair amount of time in terms of instructional time. So Friends of the Hanover Norwich Schools granted us a great deal of money to approve or to move forward on both of those counts. So we're very thankful for that.
Thank you. So, hold on, let's just hear the rest.
Computer stuff in it.
Sorry, Tim.
Oh, question.
So I just noticed that the physical ergonomics in the classroom piece for the 6th grade students, it was partially funded, so you were requested roughly $1,300, and $700 is being granted. Is the $1,300 the full amount for that, and would that be funded through?
That was the full amount, and we're looking for ways that we would be able to fund that through. We've sort of been holding off on a lot of our material purchases because of the addition of the +1 classes this year, to sort of wait and see what everybody needs, because we have a number of classes that are running for the first time. I think we should be able to find that for the end of the year, and I would imagine what we would go for is some of the pieces are bigger, sort of, they look like a cross between a gaming chair and a beanbag chair. So the students would be more comfortable in their silent reading. That's probably what we'll go with first. And if we really need the discs, which the students sit on, which engages their core, etc., we have some of those that Nat Shellness had used a grant 2 years ago to get for his 504 students. So I think we can probably cobble together some of that. Steal some from PE.
Okay, thank you.
Computer science classes are growing, so Jason Hirschhorn has asked for flexible cords. So basically, there are cords running all over the room and extension cords everywhere, and the hazard is high. So he figured out some sort of system where the cords will drop from the ceiling, and there's stations in the middle, so you can hook up. And so he requested money for that, and that's got funded. And the other is we just approved a CAD and prototyping class in our program of studies, and it's the startup cost for that class.
And which class is that?
CAD and prototyping.
Oh, that's the class, okay.
Yeah, so we have DIY, there's metals, woods and metals, and there's another DIY class that's escaping me the name of it right now, and that department has been growing. And, when a lot of kids went to Hartford, and then that department kind of fell apart a little bit in terms of, we used to do auto shop and things down in our basement. I keep calling it this because it was in the basement, and then it's come back in terms of these DIY classes, and they're gateways to Dharma, CAPS, all these upper level engineering courses, but you have to learn how to use all the tools in these classes. So.
Deb.
I spent
the better part of an afternoon down there with Mr. Levine and his students, looking at what they were doing and looking at the facility. And I'd been in the CPP meeting that approved this course, and it's really super. I would love to have students come and spend 5 minutes at the beginning of a Dresden meeting just sharing some of the projects they work on, because it's really, really fascinating.
Maybe we can have that in the spring. Maybe we can have some of the students come in and talk in the
Yes.
spring. Any other, Neil?
Do you know, so the grant amount, do you know what aspect of the course this covers?
My eye has not been very carefully on this ball.
I just asked the question maybe a little bit differently. I'm curious as to whether or not in the future that money would need to be wrapped into a budgetary
Right.
amount? Is it because it's a recurring
I
cost,
look
or if
back?
it's like a one-time setup sort of thing?
I'll look back through my email and try to remember what this exactly was in terms of startup costs, but I'm not recalling.
Can I ask a different question? Sure. So would we be able to offer the course without the grant?
Yes, we would figure out a way to do it. We approved it already.
The course was approved prior to the grant being received.
Yes, yeah.
So at this point, if no one has any other comments, if we can have a motion to approve?
Move to approve with sincere gratitude the donation from the Friends of Hanover Norwich Schools as presented.
Lisa, seconds. All in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you, Norwich and Hanover, Friends of Hanover and Norwich Schools. Moving on to the Byrne Foundation. So this is the March Intensive.
Yeah, so the yearly donation from the Byrne Foundation to help with scholarships for March Intensive. So Dorothy, once again, has been super generous and
Any questions or comments?
What happens if we don't use that money? Does it go into a
it
fund?
stays, it
Okay.
rolls over from year to year in that fund, so there's more money in that fund right
Got
now
it.
from previous years.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Knowing that she's planning to shut down that foundation soon, are there ideas for future years of where this $15,000 might come from?
We have other families who've donated.
Okay.
And so we would
Okay.
go back to them and could keep expanding that group.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
What's the secret ice cream in 2023 message?
Yeah.
She delivered to you.
Oh, did you see, oh, it was photocopied there? Oh. I forgot that was in the letter. But it's really good ice cream at the mini co-op down by the boathouse.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Can we have a motion? Yeah.
Move to approve with sincere gratitude the donation from the Byrne Foundation in the amount of $15,000 for March Intensive scholarships as presented.
10 seconds. All in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous.
Should have said only if we get ice cream.
So we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing and move into our regular Dresden meeting. So agenda review, does anyone have any additions, subtractions, or changes to the agenda for tonight? Seeing nothing, moving on. Public comments. The chair will give members of the public 3 minutes each to comment on items not in the agenda. The board respectfully asks members of the public to state their names and address before commenting on agenda topics. Is anyone at home? No one here in the audience? So moving on from public comments to the reports.
Medushi is on
Hi.
Thank you, Vidushi. Anyone have any comments or questions for Deb?
I would just like the board to know that on election day, Vidushi and her mom spent the better part of the evening welcoming voters into the school and directing them to the appropriate place in the gym for either registering or voting. And I think that is a wonderful testimony to Vidushi's community engagement. And so I wanted to thank you, Vidushi.
Any other comments or questions for Vidushi?
Sure, I have a question.
Kim?
So Vidushi, thank you very much for your update. When you're looking forward to next year, right? You said talking about the schedule. Specifically, what about the schedule would be under discussion, or the question? Or are you saying that the schedule, like the agenda for council, or specifically kind of like the school calendar agenda?
So we have a schedule right now that has blocks and periods, so double periods and, right? And an issue with it, that we're finding with it, is that certain students, and you may have heard this as board members, are bounced out of classes. For instance, if they have a world language class and a band class, they can't take both, right? Because it doesn't fit in the schedule. And so we're crossing that bridge. If it seems like a great compromise to do this schedule where people best practice feel like every day world languages they can meet, and other people like science classes who want labs could do it. So we came up with this genius idea that is causing too many conflicts. There's always conflicts because of singletons and doubletons, but the crashing of the two makes it even worse. So we either have to do periods, we have to do blocks. Someone created another schedule that has long periods twice a week and short periods 3 times a week. We've been talking about as a staff. I'm going to bring it to students tomorrow, and also ask them too the question of, we have a lot of singletons and doubletons. We've been talking about it in the budget process. Do we value this? If we value it, we can choose one or the other, or we could have 10th grade English, 11th grade English, 12th grade English, and maybe keep this double schedule together. So we're crossing that bridge. We have to make the decision before we leave for the holiday break, because the building of next year's schedule starts as soon as we get back in January, even though it seems like a long time. But getting ready to build it, have students sign up, run it, and break all the conflicts starts in January. So we're going to talk about it in council tomorrow and see how students feel, so we can add that to and how council feels, and add that to the staff conversation.
Thank you. Tony?
What are singletons and doubletons?
So for instance, we have French 4 and we have French 4H, right? And there's one class of French 4 and one class of French 4H. So it's a doubleton. We have singleton. Then if you put 4 and 4H together, this teacher differentiated within the class, so some honors and kids got honors, then that would turn into a doubleton, because you'd have 2 times in the day that they could sign up for French 4. Right now, there's 1 time of the day they can sign up for French 4. Same with, upper level electives. There's only one of that class. If it runs 7th period the same time as French 4, the student can't take both of those. So those cause a problem just because there's not many times in the day, versus Civitas and Civilization, which the 9th graders are in. There are 12 sections they can choose from throughout the whole day.
Any other comments or questions?
As you guys are discussing this, is there any talk of getting rid of lunch, or is that something that's going to stay?
I think that was a charge for many years it was a charge, then the schedule committee, that was a for sure, you have to figure out a way to create lunch, so I don't think we're gonna get rid of lunch.
Great, thank you.
And I think by state law now, don't we, is
Right.
it required?
Yeah.
Go back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can't go back.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Moving on to Tim.
Okay, so the sad news comes first. And the faculty succumbed to the 8th grade on Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and we lost the Turkey Bowl for the first time in untold years. We were severely, we actually, we drafted 3 players from the high school, made them faculty members for the day, and they kept us close, but we couldn't succeed. So we're already recruiting for next year. So if you know anybody, let us know. Like I said, we had some difficulty because our Dartmouth football player who volunteered in the school last year went on to other things and didn't replace himself. Still mad at me about that. In other news, we had sort of tried to, this is a time for vignettes, and I had hoped to bring students here, but the timing of the meeting and the break just did not work out so well. So I tried to give a pretty, just a quick update as to what school was like in the week and a half before break. And we had some pretty very Richmond school things going on with lots of projects happening, lots of things being dropped off the balconies, lots of things being juggled and spun and rode upon in the lobby. We did have our first unicycle accident over break. So we have a student now who has a brace on his wrist because he fell off his unicycle. Not on campus, thankfully. So we didn't have to worry about that. We have a benefit dinner for the Haven that students had organized that was going to be before break. It's now going to be on Thursday night this week. So if anybody wants to come by the Richmond School and eat some macaroni and cheese and salad and make some donations to the Haven. If they raise a certain amount of money on that Thursday, then Mr. LaCrosse and I will share half and half wearing the newly purchased turkey soup that we have, which is good because the one we had last year was from the elementary school and had been bought for someone significantly smaller than either Mr. LaCrosse or myself. So it was an interesting thing. We also took a moment to celebrate Oliver Collins, who I think has been in the paper recently, is the newly crowned Vermont State Open Chess Champion, the youngest to ever win it by a significant margin. We didn't know that seeing him play chess in the library every day and then go to the Howe Library once a week was going to pay off, but it worked out really well. And then we had our talent show the Friday before the last 2 days before Thanksgiving, sort of a typical wonderful middle school show of much talent and widely diverse. Again, heavy metal, Vivaldi. But our 2 students who have recently come from the Ukraine played, I did not know they could do this, but they had a duet on their accordions. That's fantastic. So they're trying to bring the accordion back. We did a quick student survey on what homework was. We've been trying to cut back on homework. We wanted to know if the students' experience of homework was the same as the teacher's experience of homework. And I just had to pass along the one thing that one of our students wrote. Someone said it's copied and pasted. I couldn't find it specifically like this. I'm sure parts of it are, but even if it's copied and pasted, it's rather artfully done, so I wanted to pass that along. And the only other thing is that we are going to put out a survey about our plus classes as we get to the end of the first semester. But anecdotally, what we have noticed because of the new structure in the 7th and 8th grade is that, and it may have something to do with COVID as well, I'm sure it does, but the number of acute emotional or anxiety issues that we've had this year is way down from the last 2 years. And we would like to think it's because we do have everybody organized as a team. All of the teachers share all of the students in common. It's much easier to make connections. They have the plus class during the day, which is an academically based class, but it's taken away all of the grade pressure from it. So we've tried to reintroduce the idea of learning for learning's sake. So we have students writing blogs that are thousands of words long on things that are interested to them. Checking the stock market, like I said, that's the only problem we have with cell phones is they're all checking their stocks to see how they're doing, having spirited discussions about what they should buy and sell. So thank you for supporting that. We're going to do some more research into it, but anecdotally it seems to have really made a change. The feeling of the building is much calmer than it has been. Sort of the underlying pressure seems to have dissipated. The underlying pressure has dissipated. The energy is back with a vengeance, especially for these 3 weeks, I think. Especially if we can't go outside. I was talking to a student yesterday, or today, who had a little problem in the gym at lunch, so he's not going back to lunch in the gym. And I said, well, what are you going to do if it rains tomorrow and you can't go outside? He goes, yeah, that's going to be difficult. So we made an agreement. He's going to come see me, and then we'll figure out something. But yeah, so far, we'll get student vignettes here in the spring. Our problem is going to be limiting it. We have so many students who are so interested in doing so many things. I don't know how much time we're going to have to give it to people. So that's what we have so far.
Thank you, Tim. Any comments or questions for Tim?
Sorry, just one request, and I know it's really hard to schedule things without running into conflicts with other things. But it appears that a lot of times when things get moved around, it conflicts with school board meetings. So the choral concert now conflicts with the December 13th meeting. So just.
Well, it was supposed to be tonight.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Whatever, I'm gonna
Yes.
miss one.
Yes, so it just, I know that it's hard not to conflict, but some of us would love to attend, and it's hard to be two places at once.
Right,
So.
so the big issue that we ran into there is that for the choral concert especially, we need the accompanist,
Yes,
and his schedule
Yeah.
is severely limited.
okay. Well, know that we're disappointed there.
So if the school board wanted you all to have kids, they would have issued you kids,
This sounds familiar.
Good point.
right?
Yeah, good point.
Or I jokingly moved to end all school board meetings.
Or hold the school board meeting at the choral concert.
Lisa, if Tom can finish it in an hour, we can get to the choral concert.
There we go.
So just,
Perfect.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome, and I had that, I think I still had the original meeting in my.
Yeah, we were joking that we moved our meeting first,
Oh, okay.
so.
Julie?
So lots of things are happening at the high school. I'll have to go over here. Are happening at the high school. In terms of athletics and theater, music, it has been a really exciting couple weeks. Finishing off all of those things. And now there's a new sports season and new theater play that they're working towards, so that's been good. The thing that I wanted to highlight that I'm pretty excited about, I mean, there can be anything on any given day, but in this case, the part about world languages, they got creative a couple of years ago, so I know we've been talking about French, but in Latin and German, they came up with 3 levels instead of 5, sandwiched 2 and 3 together and 4 and 5 together. And then in Latin specifically, in order to, make it seem useful and exciting to the kids, they were writing their own textbook to fit the way they're doing it. And they're really excited about it and having fun doing it, and I'm pretty proud of them for doing it. So at some point, maybe Brian Glennie will come and talk about that. But that's been wonderful. And pretty much just a lot going on. No big questions for me. I mean, you've seen some of the Friday weeklies, so there's a lot going on, but yeah.
Well, this is not a question, but I want to take the time to commend the cross-country team
Yes.
for not only winning the state championship and not only winning the meet of champions, but earning maybe a quarter of an inch of coverage in the Valley News. And this is not a spectator sport unless you count parents and family. And so it's not like soccer and it's not like football and it's not like basketball. And I think those kids, in particular the girls team, and I won't single out Tori for parenting the second fastest runner on the team in the 9th grade, but I think that they really deserve to have attention given to them for that really significant accomplishment. So if you would pass that on to
Yes.
them and their coach,
Yeah.
I think that would be great.
Their coach
And is his
currently
hair
has-
still pink?
His hair is still pink. The coach said if they beat Pinkerton, he would color his hair, and they did, and his hair is pink.
Yeah.
So I think he's gonna shave it off soon. And then the vignette, just so you know, couldn't come tonight, but there are two boys who are culinary students at Hartford, and I thought it'd be interesting for them to talk to you. So I'm hoping I can slide them in, because it would only be 2 or 3 minutes at any
Will
principal's
they
report
feed
that I
us?
can get them to. They wanna bring food.
Oh, good.
So, yeah.
Nice. Thank you, Julie.
I just add a quick vignette because we were talking about before with the CAD program. We had a guest speaker who happens to be one of the daughters of one of our seventh grade science teachers, came and gave a guest presentation yesterday. And she works as a bioengineer in Boston. And her job is she uses the CAD program and a 3D printer to create models of brain aneurysms, which then surgeons can use to practice on before that, because you only get one shot at it, right, to see if it works better. So it was pretty cool to see all of our seventh grade students see what all of these different things can then actually do, and see that you can have a job doing something like this. So it's not just, there are all kinds of things. Mike Lapine and I were watching, being like, this is a little different than the science that we grew up in seventh grade. So again, I think I would echo what Julie said about these programs. Any of those CAD programs, the kids just love it. The designing part of it is amazing, and that's where it's all going in terms of
Thank you. Okay, moving on to business requiring discussion. Budget update. Kim and Jamie? Hi, Jamie.
Sure. So, I mean, I think there isn't going to be, frankly, much of an update right now, because I think you will see a large agenda item next month. But I think what we can say is, as far as an update, right? So the budget committee for the first, so we joined the Dresden budget committee with the Hanover budget committee, because this was the first time we were looking at tax rates, at least on the Hanover side. Because there's just different processes in Vermont and New Hampshire. And we also had the first time to get the Hanover Finance Committee input. And I think, I think we can have a discussion on what the budget looks like then, right? At the next meeting. But I will say that the feedback that we received from the Finance Committee, ranges, like we do across the board, right? We all have different opinions. I think, broadly speaking, there was an understanding that we are in inflationary times, that it makes sense. We're not in this standard status quo, maybe 2 or 3% increase is what we would typically have seen, right? This is, costs are increasing for everyone. And kind of just a general understanding of that. I think there were some questions around, need for new additional projects or FTEs and that kind of a thing, which is pretty typical. But that's kind of just the general flair of that. I think what would be most helpful for us as a board, and actually this is something that I don't know if we fully gave, at least this is now my opinion, so I want to gave crystal clear advice to, the middle school and the high school administration on kind of specifically what to present. So I think the budget committee said, present what you presented at the November 21st meeting, but then also give the board options to potentially reduce if need be. And I think the question that was given to us, to the board, the budget committee, to basically the board members on the committee, was what kind of specific guidance could you give? And I was just thinking since then, what kind of more specific guidance, and I think, maybe if we can kind of get like a head nod across the board, if it makes sense to give a little bit more specific guidance. And my proposal would be, we as a board, right, had approved board guidelines at a 3% expenditure increase. And I think you will hear in next month's meeting, it's not going to be a surprise that perhaps may not be quite realistic. However, it might be helpful to see we'll probably see a budget that is slightly higher than that, but maybe an additional slide that says what at each of our schools would reduce in priority order to kind of get us back down to that 3% if we wanted to have that kind of discussion. It's more of a discussion of what would a 3% budget potentially look like, and I know the high school has created one already, so I'm just, if we can all say yes, like each of the schools plus SAU district-wide, and frankly, we might not think, look at it and say that, well, that's not possible to cut, our health benefits, that might be where we get down to, but at least it's on paper, on a slide, so we can say, this is maybe why that 3% initial target may need to be, reconsidered, but at least it gives us an answer for why we can or can't get back to the 3%. So if that sounds, so it's a little bit of a, if that's more crystal clear direction, and if that's okay with folks, just as far as what to expect for what the board will see at the next meeting. I can give more details, but I don't want to steal the thunder of the formal presentation.
Any comments or questions for Ken? Thank you. Moving on to...
So is that, did I get a head nod, like, as far as kind of direction for the board to send to kind of, as far as what to present? So they're obviously going to present what the proposal is, what is moving with staffing, enrollment, that kind of a thing, but then kind of, it'll likely come a little higher than what the initial target was, but just be able to explain perhaps why, or it gives, if the board thinks that we need to reduce in any way, like what areas would be kind of the first to go.
Counted 3 head nods so far.
Okay.
Garrett?
Thanks, Jay.
I was gonna say, for the next meeting, right, like you'll see, it's pretty simple numbers, but it's basically salary and benefits are up about 5%, and as we all know, that's most of the budget. So I think the administrators were saying, we do want to see it down at 3%. It's either gonna be
Cutting bones.
something pretty major that's going to impact our system, or it's going to be a million little cuts that's going to be like, so that's the decision ahead of everybody, I think, which is why the proposal is, hey, show us what would have to be cut to get there, and then everyone can be like, you know what, this is, the problem is we have salaries and benefits going at 5%.
Yeah, I think it's like kind of a clear picture of where we are in the budget and kind of the growth of what's mandatory and what's more new.
So is everyone, Tony?
Sorry, I just had a question about the reaction of the Hanover Finance Committee presentations.
Yep, so I mean, we had members of the committee said, yep, this looks great as presented, which was above, the 3% target. We had members asking, why can't we go back to the 3%? What happened to that? So I think part of this explanation might help answer that question about why we can or cannot go back to the 3% target. We had members asking very specific questions about the need for a particular new FTE or the justification for it. Actually is kind of currently, it's not really even a net new. It's like it was already approved in this year, or not approved in this year's budget, but is currently on staff because we approved the hiring later as a board, right? And so it's not really a new, but why did that occur? What is it? So those are kind of general flavor of the discussion. So, and the finance committee does not vote until we kind of finalize, and then they have their formal vote to say yay or nay. So just to kind of keep that in mind as far as process. So it was mostly just questions about why this and like that. And folks can disagree with me who were there.
The tax rate in Hanover is going up for a couple of reasons that aren't our budget problem, really. It's the fact that there's two real reasons, right? One is that I believe there's some money last year that's not coming back from the state this year. And then the other reason is the mix of students, even though we've smoothed the curve with the whole Hanover Norwich thing, there are more Hanover students, I believe, now, so that's causing the numbers to go a little bit unfavorable as well. So it's more than just this base budget increase. And so I think they got that, right? They clearly, a couple of the members were very clear on that underlying issue.
So does everyone support?
Jamie has your hand raised.
Go ahead, Jamie. So does everyone support what Kim is proposing? Head nod. Great. Moving on to election location. That's you, Jay.
It's kind of me. I think there's, our principals are more than welcome to join the conversation. We have been talking, I guess, year after year about the difficulty of hosting our elections in this building at the same time students are in session. And it's very difficult to keep the student population separate from the voters who are coming in. And Julie, you want to just kind of elaborate on it?
So we met with the town, Jamie, and a few of us met with the town. In this building, it's really hard to separate the voters from the students because there's classes on this end of the school. There's a way that we could do it by turning the voting, which the town was a little bit reticent to do, they felt like it was too last minute, and have everyone park in the back and come into the gym and out the locker room hallway. But I said that I felt like if we wanted to really take safety seriously, and it stayed here, we needed to do that, and so hopefully they've heard that loud and clear. But, in talking with Tim, the Richmond school would be a much better place to vote because there's a way of shutting off the whole school from the voting that's happening. And I think with open carry laws, as well as, we lock the building during the school day, we buzz people in and out. Even to have students who maybe went here once and we don't want to enter the building without us knowing that they're here, to have the building wide open, in this case 3 times a year, seems like it's not taking safety seriously enough for our students. And I think shutting down for 3 days a year, I don't, if we have a better option, why aren't we using it? And I feel like the town needs to hear that. I said it really clearly. I'm hoping that everyone is supportive of that and that we can get it moved. I think the biggest worry for them was voter confusion. If we move the vote or park in the back of the building and come in the back door, might confuse voters. I think we have a pretty intelligent voting population that with advertisement and signage could figure it out. So I think that's a small problem, voter confusion, student safety.
Has anyone looked at the parking over at the Richmond school?
I mean, we haven't necessarily because there is the possibility March might be an issue. There's always the possibility of parking on the field.
During mud season?
Traffic, the Hanover Parks and Rec probably wouldn't be that happy with it.
Yep.
Yeah, parking would be an issue. There are other cutouts along Line Road, which can put probably, depending on, I don't vote in Hanover, so I haven't been here to vote for quite a long time, to see what the peak number of cars would be.
Did we do the COVID? We did the COVID booster clinic there.
Yep.
And I think far more people got the COVID booster than actually voted in Hanover. So it seemed to work for parking then.
So we can, after 3 o'clock, that all of the, I mean, certainly that's not gonna be a problem in the afternoons, because we can clear our cars out of there. We definitely would have to talk to, can't remember what the name is, Dartmouth Printing, they don't like it when we use their parking lot. But I think if we talk to the town, there is, if we had a crossing guard, there's significant space down on Old Rivercrest as well, along Lime Road, along Dresden Road. Traffic would certainly be an issue, but I'm sure it's an issue here as well.
Yep.
I know that there was at least one presidential election held at the Richmond School in the gym, and it was probably.
Eisenhower?
That was in this right here.
No,
This
no,
was
no,
the
no,
gym.
no, it was in the new school. It was not Ike. I'm assuming it was during the renovation of the high school.
Cars back then.
Yeah.
Because I remember it was used, and so that would have been a pretty heavy turnout. But my question is really, what about using the Black Center across the street?
That was Jamie saying.
It's not big enough?
I could tell. It's not big enough?
Jay?
I just have a couple thoughts. I think there's a possibility maybe we could have teachers park somewhere and shuttle them that day. The other thing that I
Back at
like
the race
about this
school.
idea is the proximity of the police department for helping with traffic, but also one of the things we've been concerned about is the fact that I feel like it's, I don't want to necessarily say inevitable, but I think that some of the folks who are Second Amendment enthusiasts who are looking for a way to demonstrate their rights, I think inevitably are going to show up. And I would much prefer that proximity to HPD for what I consider to be that eventuality.
Lisa?
I just was wondering, can we talk to Krell and HPD about having the teachers park in their parking lots for the day? I don't know, I mean, there's parking lots right across the street.
Corral is classified spaces, so you're not gonna get.
You
through
can't
there.
get in there, okay. Not even with lovely teachers who are fingerprinted by
Front lot
everyone.
there.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the
Oh, the
Proudy,
front lot.
the Proudy
Yeah, the Proudy
Oh,
uses
the
it.
Proudy
I
uses
you're
their
talking
parking
about
Yeah.
inside the fence line.
Yeah, no,
You know,
just,
outside the fence, I mean,
No, this is inside the fence line. The
Yeah.
Proudy uses that whole parking lot, sorry.
yeah, I just was wondering, it just might be able to, like, instead of shuttling the teachers, just move them across the street and then let the public park in the RMS lot and vote.
Or Garapi.
Yeah.
So I guess
can figure it out.
why
Yeah.
is it our problem? I don't understand why this is Dresden trying to solve the town's problem. Why isn't the town looking for solutions such as talking to Dartmouth College, who has a lot of space downtown? Why are we trying to solve the
City Hall.
problem?
Oh, yeah.
Thompson Arena.
Jamie, did you?
We have
We
three
asked
different people
about,
wanting to comment on
Okay.
this.
I think that, oh, sorry. That we
Just walk
asked-
up and start talking.
I'm sorry. I don't have that problem. So people are asking Dartmouth students would like it to be in Leveron, you know, because I think some actually got bused here to vote. So I think they want it closer to them. And they're trying, and I think the town's trying to talk to Dartmouth about that. But I don't know if they're getting anywhere with that. I don't have an answer to why it's our problem, except that one of the votes is ours.
Right.
Right? That would be the only one that's really.
The March, yeah, in the March
March,
vote,
yeah.
not the primaries and the general
Right.
elections. Ben?
Tim, I was wondering, so as soon as you said, let's go to the middle school, it's safer, I was like, those children are younger, that makes no sense to me at all, it seems worse. Can you walk me through architecturally why is there an advantage to the middle school?
Because the gym in the middle school is,
Sorry.
Outdoor?
the gym in the middle school can be locked so that you can't access the school building from the gym. And they have an indoor and an outdoor in the gym, so you can just go in, vote in the gym and come out and never actually come in contact with any of the building inside at all. Now, would you be walking up towards the relatively close to the front door of the school? Yes, but you don't, I mean, here you have people walking through school hallways to get to the gym. That doesn't happen. It's basically, it can be set up so it's its own separate entity that really has no access to the building whatsoever.
In a follow-up question, for the people who are working there all day, which I assume would be probably dozens, or at least a dozen, they'd have to go into the school for things like bathroom breaks and whatnot.
Right.
So I would imagine those doors would probably still be unlocked in a
there's a
safety
bathroom.
sense.
There's
Or
a,
they have to manually walk around.
they either would come around and we'd
Okay.
let them in, or there's a bathroom, but it's in the hallway.
Are part of the lock area.
Well, except then,
That doorway locks right there in the hallway.
yeah, but we need to get to the cafe. That would
Oh,
be the
cafe?
issue. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you won't be able to get.
Right.
Right,
So,
but the bathroom. they
my
can-
issue would, they just come out and walk around and we let them in.
We have 3 people online who wish to talk as well,
Uh,
including Paducci, who's on board. and
Paducci,
Jamie.
go ahead first. Thank you.
Jamie's your name.
Jamie? Thank you. Is there someone else?
There's a member of the public named Carol who wishes to speak.
Carol, can we move Carol over to the panel? Yes, we can. If you can just give us your name and where you live, or what town you're from. Thank you, Carol. So what are the next steps, Ben?
You also have Kelly McConnell calling in.
She had hockey pickup.
Kelly?
Yes.
Kelly.
Thank you. Kim?
Um, so I guess one little tidbit and one question. So I actually heard at the Hanover Select Board meeting, the Select Board was congratulating how many volunteers participated in the last election. And so to answer is it a dozen that would need to use the restroom? I think there was something like 70 volunteers that help with elections. So just to kind of give you a scale of the help. And then the other is, well, I guess my second point is we still have traditional town meeting for the town side. So I guess the question is what, if anything, would be changed with that, or we'd still have it at the high school or not. And then, yeah, I guess the third, I feel like we're not having a great collaborative discussion, because I feel like, I mean, it's great that Carol, kind of called in, but I know that there are, supervisors of the checklist and our Hanover town clerk and others who probably have more information, and I just was maybe hoping if we could, and maybe this has already happened where people have been talking, but I just want to make sure if we do decide that we want to change locations, that we have enough people in the discussion to make that decision. So I would encourage maybe some.
So who makes the decision, though? Isn't this the town of Hanover makes the decision? Or do we make our decision for our own school board votes?
Jamie?
Yeah, Jamie answered first.
Jamie? Again, is it a school board decision, though? Okay. Yeah. Tony?
What, during COVID, when they used lead, who made that decision? Does anyone know how that?
Yeah.
Well, my understanding is that because there were no athletic events happening at Dartmouth, it was an empty, unused space, so it wasn't an issue. And because of distancing, it offered the capacity to spread out all the election booths, but it's not likely that that would be the case post-COVID.
But who made that, how was that decision made? We're moving it from the high school
Good
to lead. Who said it's gonna be here?
Well, no, so to answer the question, so it was the town clerk, Betsy McLean, in her dual role as finance director / town clerk. It was a big issue to try to find where to house with then significant distancing and whatnot, and so that's what they were able to work out.
I remember a public health officer being really involved too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but it was the
And we were
town and the
shut.
select board, and it was presented to the select board as an option.
Neil?
So I too am thinking the same thing that you're thinking, Rick, right? And I'm trying to figure out, so I agree with Tony, like, I mean, one approach could be that the school board could vote that we no longer want to host voting. I think a more appropriate step forward might be, and I hate to even mention this, right, is to form a subcommittee. Right, because I think that there is a level of collaboration here that is necessary, right? And to the extent that the school board is the body that owns the election for the school budget, I think makes sense for that body to be the one involved with whatever town body is necessary, then to determine or talk through the bigger picture issues of multiple elections and where to host them. And I think to do that in a collaborative rather than, the board simply saying, we no longer are going to host these, you figure it out town, I think is not the right way to approach this. I think that it does need to be a conversation, but by forming a committee that ensures that those conversations happen in a duly warned public meeting, that they follow public meeting law, and that all of those conversations are transparent and open.
Julie?
So I'm just hoping so I've been trying to start this conversation for a few years. We had a conversation with the town people who make these decisions. A change seems like people are resistant to. And I, as the person who's ultimately in charge of the safety of this building and these kids, I do not want the vote here unless they turn it. And that even seemed to be an issue, like turning it 25 degrees, right? So turn it 25 degrees and don't have people walking through the same hallway, or move it off this campus. Like, it feels like one of those, like, I'll lie down on the tracks and say, if that can't happen, it should not be here. We completely are turning our heads on those 2 days, the ones we've just had, and kind of been like, whatever, we just hope nothing will happen. When I have to write to the state, like, what are we doing for safety protocols for everything? How do we buzz people in? We don't leave our doors wide open any other day, and then that day we just sort of walk away going, hope it'll be great. And that just feels like we shouldn't do that. I'm responsible for these 700 kids in this building. We can't keep doing that. So whatever pressure, like, I don't think I'm the one that's able to lie down the tracks apparently, because I sort of tried, but for someone to say, you turn it 25 degrees and everyone parks in the back, or we go to Richmond, or it's not here, some version of that is what I prefer, but I'm not in charge of this piece of it, but I feel irresponsible. It's like I almost want to call in sick on those 2 days, so I don't have to deal with whatever happens.
Eric?
So the turning it solution, I don't really feel like we've talked too much about that, or maybe we have, and I wasn't.
Well, but I don't know if we need to be talking about it tonight.
Well, no, okay, but it seems like the turn it solution is actually a very easy outcome here versus taking it over the middle school, because my question is, does the turn it solution solve the problem?
It's a better,
So because that's why I haven't really
in terms
heard.
of the right people, right, so then the only people that come across the hall would be the election workers, and you could post a police officer right there. And then nobody enters our hallways and can get confused as a college student versus a high school student versus, right? All that confusion during the day just would be fine, because somebody would come out and the police officer say, you're voting, your exit is there.
That's why, I just want to hear Julie's
Yeah.
say that, just because, I mean, yeah, I agree with, we could form a committee, but at the end of the day, the election's in March, like,
Right.
it's now Christmas, almost the holidays, like, if there is a viable, workable solution that Julie's like, you know what, that's like 90% of the solution, it may not be 100%, but it does sound like that is the easy button on this one, as far as, versus moving it, it sounds like moving it to the middle school does create a whole, between the parking and this and like, and these other issues that came up, like, if there is an easy way out on this, and we could at least tell the town,
These
this
are our
is
parameters.
Right.
what we're doing, if you're gonna
Jay?
use this building.
I would say another solution that we might be overlooking is that a lot of districts don't have school on that day. So we could have it be a non-attendance day, and we go another day into June.
Neil?
I would still advocate for the committee, right? So I mean, I think Julie's input is very valuable information we bring in the committee. I think that there's, you've got a timeline and a sequence of events that one of the very first ones is the election that we actually own, right? So I'm seeing in my mind, there's no reason why we can't change the configuration
Right.
of the March election, because that's an election that we are the body that's responsible for that one. The committee can then solve these things, sequentially, right? But I think that, the solution to that first one might help dictate what future
So we can-
solutions would look like, and we just need to begin that work.
We can unilaterally decide that?
For
For our,
March.
for our March election, we run everything?
Yeah.
So why don't we just do that as a pilot?
Well, Rick,
Deb?
2 years ago, when Marcella ran for the school board, people came into the cafeteria to vote, and one of the big issues was students were coming in the door too. But that's where the election was, I assume by fiat of this group or Julie deciding, but, that's where, it's already been moved once, so.
Okay.
Huh?
We had playoffs.
Playoff games.
Oh, that's what it
That's
was.
So, I think it would seem that we could move it to wherever we want, but we still need the voting machines, we need the ballots, we need the cooperation of the town. And it seems like it should be an easy fix for the superintendent, for Rick, for whoever, to go to the town clerk and say, hey, just want you to know, for March, we're coming in the back. This is, we're gonna print signs that direct voters to the appropriate, but, for any advertising the town does, or whatever the town's role in this, that we just inform them and make sure that they don't have any concerns about that.
So do I have a head nod? Can I get a head nod for me and Jay to go talk to the town manager and the clerks that we're gonna do what we just talked about, turning everything 25 degrees for the March? We'll do an assessment at the end and potentially convene a committee to talk about doing this for all other elections going forward.
I just would, I would want to include, if you do a committee, someone from Dartmouth College in that discussion, not just the town, but the college as well, so.
Well, I don't think we would ever ask Dartmouth to do our school elections there.
No, but I'm saying if we're
We'll ask-
having the committee after the March for the November,
That should be a town invite, so we'll ask the town to
We have a
include
town.
someone.
yeah.
Point of order question, since the warrants would be both Dresden and Hanover, wouldn't it be the SAU rather than Dresden that would handle that?
Sure, I'll go, fine.
Or both, or something, right? Isn't there Hanover warrant articles?
Jay will walk over.
The ballots are a Dresden ballot and a Hanover ballot and a Norwich ballot. There is no SAU. The SAU, if you remember right, the SAU budget is folded into all of the other ones. It doesn't, it's not.
It's not its own
I don't
thing.
think it's a concern on point of order. I think Dresden, since we're using Dresden facilities, so Jay and I will take it.
Also, Jamie, has your hand up.
Jamie? Thank you. Any other comments about this election location? Kim?
Just a clarifying, so is there an issue, because I haven't heard an answer about the formal town meeting that still occurs after our March votes, right? It's what, May sometime? And so is that an issue from a safety, because that happens at night in the gym, so, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out the scope of the issue. So it's just the like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. elections. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Moving on to state fire and safety reports.
Oh, fun stuff.
And a little facility update, I guess, prior to that. How you doing all? I'm Tony, your facilities director. Yeah, before I would look over, both reports came in really good. It's mostly housekeeping stuff, but we'll go over those few issues if there's any questions about those. But I wanted to mention that our facility assessment is happening here at the high school and at Richmond in December. We're going to do those. Richmond will be on the 20th and 21st, and here will be on our walkthrough of the part of the assessment. And high school will be on 22nd and 23rd.
Of December?
Of December.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've already did Marion Cross. We're using that as a pilot assessment. We expect to get a report back from them shortly on that, and then we'll go through that with the folks. Maybe make some changes if we want to, but then our actually walkthrough for the assessment will be at the end of December. Probably within 2 or 3 weeks, we should get some kind of data. So I don't know if we'll be ready for the January meeting, but probably most likely the February meeting we'll be able to bring some of that information to this board.
But those assessments are actually what are feeding Tom's facilities committee.
Yes,
Right.
exactly,
Oh.
exactly. But there might be some stuff that we ask them for that might be red flags
Okay.
that come up, which we will also bring to your attention. One other thing in facility world is that the state of New Hampshire, I don't know if you guys probably heard about it, is the Get the Lead Out program. I do want to report on that for the Richmond and for the high school, because they changed the requirements from 15 parts per billion down to 5 in New Hampshire. Vermont's always been 4. Since we started this back in 18, I think is when the program started. But I want to report that Richmond has, everything is under actionable levels. We had no faucets came in above 5 parts per billion. And here at the high school, and Richmond has 37 locations where you could possibly get a drink of water. High school has 34, and we only had one that was 5.5 parts per billion, and that was a pottery sink in the art department, which we labeled it not potable water, and actually changed the faucet. I just don't have the results back from the test.
Do you think the lead is coming from the faucet itself? Or
A lot of times it is. It's either a shut-off valve or a faucet, but a lot of this stuff was all changed in the 2006 renovation, so it's could be just a blip in something. Like I said, Richmond was brand new in 2005. We didn't have anything over there. And all 4 of our schools are actually pretty good when you get down to those levels of lead in the water. Pretty good. All right, so that's that facility assessment. Just want you know, from what I hear from talking to these engineers, they're going to kind of classify some of the stuff as we did prior, whether it's poor, fair, or good, right? And so I want to report to you guys that I believe we're in fair shape. I would like to say good.
You're setting the expectations low,
right in the middle. No, I want to say I'm optimistic. I think we're in good shape. But a lot of our equipment is 17 years old, and it's going to be interesting to see what others classify it as. But all of our, I've taken care of all the annual inspections on most of the stuff that's going to cause us any trouble, like fire alarm systems, sprinkler systems, access controls, building automation,
elevators, gymnasium equipment, roofs. The inspection was completed, and that came out pretty good, even though we had some of those roofs. The boilers, all of our handicap doors, our underground fuel tanks, all that stuff's been inspected for this year, and no red flags in any of that at the moment. Again, it'll be interesting to see when we have other fresh eyes on this stuff.
So I've always wondered, the outward bound devices that are out behind the football field.
Yeah.
Who inspects all that?
It's a company called High Five, and
Okay.
they're licensed in installing that type of equipment and inspecting that type of equipment.
And they come out before
And they come out,
school year?
yep,
to-
we do that in July. And
Okay.
actually, our PE department actually sets that up. I just help them out with cutting
Okay.
trees and getting stuff out of their way. But that happens every July. And actually, our 2 PE teachers are certified instructors
Mhm.
through a company like High Five.
Okay.
So it covers us that way. That's one of the reasons why we couldn't install a zip line at the Marion Crossroad, because nobody's really certified. Nobody wants to, first of all, install a zip line for elementary school kids that nobody's going to be certified to watch them go down it. So those types of things.
Any
Okay.
comments or questions for Tony? And
Tony, what's with the dead end corridor issue for the high school?
Well,
That one confuses me.
I talked to the chief, and that's actually a non-issue because we don't have any dead-end corridors.
Okay.
I think he just,
read the question.
yeah, so that was for
It's
the
a
high school, right? Let me
confusing
just pull, there was a few things
Was it
on
number
there.
Triple
19?
negative.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Number
Um,
19.
Yeah, I called him up on a couple of these because there were a few that came through blank, and then that one was a fail, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't actually have any dead-end corridors, so he just checked that one. And I think the one above it, there was no check, right, which it
Yeah.
says
Right.
all exit access corridors, that also passed. The one that did, there was a fail on number 16, right?
Yeah.
And that's due to, when we look at the back of this, where we have a few housekeeping issues, it pertains to that. Stuff, obstacles, obstructions being in the way.
Pianos.
A boat blocking the ceiling.
Well, the boat, yeah, we'll talk about that, that's the vertical opening, that's 32. Yeah, so that's it, yeah, 32 and 16 for the high school were really the issues. And then we did write up a few more things again, which, let's see. So yes, stairwell 9 is the one that's out here that goes up to the music area and to the top of the auditorium. There happened to be some boxes that were just for musical stuff that was just there, being waiting to be moved into the band room, and so they're not stored there. That's, you just moved that up like that. So let me take care of that. The gym hallway is the one with the obstacles, which we've been culturing our high school students to leave their bag there. I don't know,
Yeah.
we got to change that somehow. We're, principal and I and the athletic department, we're trying to figure that out. We're thinking some kind of benches with cubbies underneath that the bags could be put in, which I think the fire department would accept that. Luckily, those corridors are like 10 feet wide and 12 feet wide, so some days it's worse than others, if happens to be whatever sport is in season. Our kids, and it's amazing that kids will just leave their stuff there and not worry that it's going to be touched. But that's the way we operate in Hingham. Yeah, there was a bulletin board on wheels that was in a hallway. Clutter, some of the stage stuff. We were just before a performance, and they did have some of their clutter down there. The piano that's on wheels up in the chorus room just happened to be wheeled, and there was a 4-foot opening instead of a 6-foot opening, so it's had to wheel the piano over a couple of feet.
Are these surprise inspections?
No, we schedule this, but I don't go around. I don't go around and do anything. I mean, I'd rather. To me, this is all housekeeping. This is like things are not falling apart.
Right.
All of our fire extinguishers were inspected and labeled, and none of the pole stations are obstructed. And all of our exits were clear. But this boat hanging from the ceiling, I do need to catch up with that teacher. And we need to tighten that up a little bit.
Can I ask a
Yep.
question? this is probably insulting to ask, but I do know the Friends of Hanover is giving Jason money to have these drop down from the ceiling computer chargers. Is that gonna be okey dokey?
No, yeah, because we're gonna install those in a proper way.
Okay,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, no, and he did find a few, and I
assumed,
was
but-
surprised that, actually, a couple of these were really hard to find, like this one, 115A, extension cord as permanent wiring. I mean, you really have to kind of look at it and to know that it's not been installed by
Right.
someone properly. And then the other one,
I was surprised.
another extension cord going through the ceiling, yeah, and didn't know about that one. And again, we don't pop into every room, but we kind of look in as we go by, and then if it's open and they say, oh, come in, we go in, and then we just happen to find, but yeah. Yeah, so and then we did look, after these, we did start looking, and most of them were professionally installed. We don't know why, like, 118 was missed, and someone put a cord up there. But, so yeah, those are on my to-do list to get those straightened out. And we are in the process, through the media center here, of upgrading a lot of our sound systems and stuff like that now, so that's all part of that. Richmond was very minor for Richmond. And again, this is the beauty of having a school that's only 17 years old. Everything's pretty much intact.
Number 44.
44. I don't have any problem. Oh, that was, yeah. So if you look on the back, he's got library book cart blocking door.
Keeps coming up.
I fought with Mike over that. Because the library book cart is on wheels. And my contention was when the door swings closed, it would knock the book cart out of the way. We moved it, we had a fire drill today.
Yes.
So I made sure that it's the cart that they leave the books for students who have ordered so they can.
It's literally a cart that's
It's
like this big.
It's this big.
And it's orange, you can see it, it's just happened to be wheeled with a door. Yeah.
With the automatic door.
Yeah, the door's
Tim,
on
I
a
think you
magnet,
doth
so-
protest too much.
Yes. Mike and I go way back. And I'm like, no, you're not getting this.
And the other one was, there's a fire department connection on the outside of the building by the kitchen, and there was some pallets leaned against it, which, we now know not to put pallets in it. So, I mean, it's good. It's good that he's pointing these things out and giving me something to do. And
Thank
You're
you,
not
Tony.
busy otherwise.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Neil?
I don't have a question, just a comment. As I sit here and mull over the absurdity of the state of New Hampshire in restricting the amount of lead that comes out of a drinking faucet, and at the same time relaxing gun laws that would allow the delivery of lead through a firearm into the building, it is just absolutely mind-boggling.
yeah,
Comment done.
and again, I don't think some of these things pertain to us in this community because our buildings are fairly renovated and new, but I would imagine other parts of the state, some of the school buildings are not in as good shape as what we have, so.
Jamie? Thank you. Anything else?
I just want to say, no, we'll probably look forward to, Jamie and I, probably in February maybe, we'll have some more facility news for you.
Yeah.
We are, a couple of notes, we are continuing to work on the baseball field project and the track replacement project, which hopefully again, January we'll have, or February we'll have more information on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Moving on to policies. Ben?
Hi, all, these are all policies we've talked about before. These are the ones that went through the last SAU meeting without comment or amendments, except for BEDH, which is the public participation one. For that one, we were switching out the word table as a verb and replaced it with, was it reserve or recess?
Reserve.
Reserve. So apart from that one, which is number 6 on BEDH, there were no changes at the SAU meeting for any of these.
Lily?
I have nitpicky grammar stuff. Can I
Nitpicky grammar stuff is
Yeah.
fire welcome.
Okay. Do you want it now or do you, okay. ACE,
Actually,
no.
you just email it to them.
Got it.
If it is not of substance, we can change it
If it's
without
just like
bringing it
grammatic,
to a vote.
Scribner's errors.
Yes, and some misnumbering.
Thank you, Lily.
Yeah, just send it to me in writing.
So does anyone have any questions?
Sorry, can I,
Yes.
one more thing. Again, ACE, the equity policy, number 3, B3E. Did you consider adding compensation? It's identify and counteract biased practices in recruitment, retention, and hiring.
So, to remind everyone, the A series is more like aspirational policies.
Okay.
So when it comes to the specific, what practices are you trying to identify, that would be something that would come into regulatory stuff later, where you would get into sort of the regulatory stuff that the policy and equity and J would kind of get into the specifics of that in policies down the road, rather than that level of granularity at this level.
Okay.
Is what I would initially say. But compensation would certainly be
Isn't that
an
aspirational,
aspect
though?
of
I mean,
recruitment
given
and retention
the-
and hiring. It could be. I mean, there's no reason, I don't see a reason to not add it, but I also think that its absence doesn't mean we wouldn't do it.
Okay.
It would just be an aspect of recruitment,
Good enough.
retention, hiring.
Kim?
So for BEDH, the public participation.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that, because when this bill was passed to make the 30-minute period, it was actually very confusing language even amongst the legislators of the group of what the 30 minutes actually meant. So whether the board could institute as many boards have, like you have 3 minutes, you have 5 minutes kind of thing. And according to our policy, we have 3 minutes per person, which would basically 30 divided by 3 would have 10 people ability to speak. Or if only one person comes, can we still have 3 minutes per person with that 30? So the 30 minutes would therefore not need to be, kind of taken at that moment. And it says like if insufficient, we could keep going or basically move. I just wanted to clarify that if there was any sort of clarity that was given about that 30 minutes versus 3 minutes. And I know some House and senators are saying you'd have to sit there for 30 minutes no matter what. And I know, I think cooler minds have prevailed on that, but I just wanted to make sure that was very clear that we can still do the 3 minutes per person and the 30 minutes, kind of,
If needed.
yeah.
Jay?
You're right, the 3 minutes was determined really on a First Amendment basis. It was deemed in a variety of cases that limitations that went down as far as the restricted comment to 2 minutes somehow were violations of First Amendment protections, and then if you went 3 minutes, you're okay. That's sort of where the prevailing law is, and I was recently at the Kidder Law Conference where they talked about both the First Amendment aspects of this and the procedural aspects at board meetings, and they agreed that if you had your public comment period and only one person spoke, you could still limit to 3 minutes, and that you then had to reserve the remainder of the time. You could reorder that to the end of the meeting, and if nobody showed up, fine. If a bunch of people showed up, you have 27 minutes left, and they said that was fine.
And actually, if you notice, for today's meeting, Ryan kind of jumped the gun a little bit. There's actually a public comment at the end of the meeting as well for this meeting.
Kim?
Yeah, and I would say our policy is also unique. I mean, we have public comment ability at the end of each topic, right? So at the end of each agenda item, which is we recall from our lessons and learnings and teachings on public comment, right? That it is this protected period where, we as a board are part of the big G government to make sure we protect First Amendment rights. And so, therefore, the 3-minute policy would also include, but as far as timing of the 30 minutes, it gets a little wishy, right? Because we kind of offer these multiple public comment periods, which the spirit of the law was just to make sure that we had public comment periods. We actually had more public comment
Right.
than I think normal. And so I'm still just trying to make sure, we're amending our policy the way it's supposed to be. And so I guess, do we have 27 minutes at the end, or is it but we've offered it throughout the meeting, so I don't know.
So as it is written right now, the 30 minutes would be the sort of before and after sectors. And then additionally, for those who are looking along at number 7, we do additionally allow comments specific to a certain item after the board is done discussing that item, kind of like we did earlier
And
tonight,
the
actually.
chair has the leeway to shut down the
Yes, the
discussion
chair,
after.
if you read it, the chair has a lot of discretion.
We have to afford the 30 minutes, and we also give opportunities, but we're not going to spend 3 hours on a topic unless it makes sense. If
Yeah.
it becomes redundant.
And there are several,
I just wanted to clarify because it can be confusing.
and in several of the other numbers, there are reasons that the chair could shut down discussion for a variety of reasons, if they need to.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions?
On
Thank
any-
you, guys. You guys are really busy. Moving on to business requiring action. Good.
I just want to amend one weird thing about the minutes before we go to approve.
Sure.
And there are 2 places under the high school principal's report where Julie's referred to as the interim principal. And I just think it must have populated perhaps from another
yeah.
document, but
Yep.
that needs to be changed.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Julie, you're our principal.
You really are.
So can we get a motion to approve by consent as amended? Yep.
I move to approve items B, C, and D by consent with the approval, with the minutes amended.
And that one policy, BEDH,
I'm sorry.
where we had changed the word table, since that one does have.
Oh.
You want to try it again?
Yes, I move to approve items B, C, and D by consent as amended.
Lisa?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Okay, moving on to report of the chair. We're really deep in the budget process. We've had a couple budget meetings. The inaugural meeting for the high school, or the Dresden tuition, kicked off last week. And we're having our second meeting coming up in about 2 weeks. And we anticipate this probably going, this ad hoc group going for a couple months as we gather data and comment. That is all I have. Anyone got committee reports? Ben?
Similar to the tuition committee, what we're calling the costing out committee will be meeting on December 7th. Which has to do
Your
with,
first meeting?
yes, our
Yeah,
first meeting,
great.
which is sort of the follow-up from that March intensive conversation.
Okay. Any other committee reports? Jay? Oh, good.
I'll just comment, I haven't reported lately on the athletic committee. So we have been meeting, we've only had one meeting this fall, we actually need to do another one before the holidays. Just so everyone's aware, I mean, we did get into it a little bit when I first became chair. There is a policy on it, and the intent of the committee is to basically provide advice to the athletic director, so we have tried to keep it, fairly narrow, and we determined, pretty much we're gonna focus on facilities, programs, and budgets. So thanks to Tim and Tony, and Jenna McLaughlin, and Megan have been the main attendees. And we just had our meeting a couple weeks ago. What we really narrowed it down to now is one, Megan's gonna work through kind of a facilities needs report, so this is not the broad facilities needs, but really having her sit down and just say, listen, these are the things when I'm meeting with my coaches that we need, and kind of put a short-term and long-term plan together. As most of you may know, in the budget, I think there's like $18,000 for uniforms, and every team has anywhere between $500 and a couple $1,000s for equipment. And other than that, it's salaries. So there's not a lot of, everything else comes from all of the Friends of programs. So helping her kind of get through that, and I think that's going to hopefully communicate better with Tony's facilities as well. And I think Megan could use some help probably combining what Tony's got in the works and kind of keeping that better coordinated. I think the second thing is going to be the process of adding sports. And even today I just learned that we have a couple of students who have looked to go to another school because we don't offer that sport. And I just learned today that I believe we actually have to get an HIA approval to enable someone to do that, which at that point then opens us up to having to provide that sport, which means that student can't do it. So it sounds completely backwards, but that might be where we're at. And then we have Title IX issues. So anyways, that's another thing we'll focus on researching, getting deeper into, and Jay's been involved in that a little bit.
So the Friends of the sports programs, with, you know,
Yeah, and then
we've talked about this numerous times.
So the third thing we're focused on is kind of funding of these programs, and I think our goal is not to break anything. As I just said, the budgets are quite small for the school. We don't want to kind of mess up what has been a long instituted program, but I think, and again, this could take a couple of years, but putting something in place that's a little bit easier for either the less well-organized teams to participate in, or which might just be an overall umbrella organization that those teams could then funnel into, or something where the teams could then come together. So say we want to raise money for the scoreboard. Maybe at that point it would be the field hockey, soccer, football. Everyone could get Friends of to donate it to one fund, to not just be all their individual silos. But again, very careful.
That conversation, that data, I think, needs to be fed into Ben's total cost of the costing committee. We're trying to actually understand all these little niche groups that are very beneficial to the school, but, you know, is it fair that, you know, one team is very good at raising funds because the coach has been doing it for years and knows exactly what to do, versus another coach that's newer and or a smaller team and they don't have the same resources. So.
I expect that these two committees will connect after.
I think we'll
possibly
connect.
this
I
meeting.
think having been in a few of these meetings now at meeting, I think we have to be very careful that we don't break the system, because like I said, you know, a lot of our school runs on funds that don't come from our budget, which we're already arguing about how much is going up. So, but having said that, I do think there's probably a better way to do it that at least maybe makes some equality between the teams so people can plug into it easier versus having some outsourced thing. I will tell you, I'm not sure even if maybe sometimes knows how much some of these other programs have, right? Like they are truly independent. So.
Neil?
Two things. One is a slight, not exactly what Garrett brought up when he was talking about students going to other schools because we don't offer the sport. We did have several years ago some very long discussions on what we called self-funded sports at the time. So those sports that began at the school and were funded through donations from parents or other organizations, eventually then needed to be folded into the operating budget of the school and the process by which that would happen. So there might be some historical documentation in those discussions.
Was that the hockey
I think it applied to a few sports, and I can't remember.
JV hockey was for sure.
Hockey, yeah.
Crew was the same thing.
The second thing is more practical in nature. Knowing the current state of the scoreboard on the turf field, is there any budgetary requests associated with that in the upcoming budget?
Tony, you know, at our last meeting, it was a little bit gray as far as whether there was some leftover budget to get that.
Oh, yeah, maybe Jane will comment.
It was put in the budget for next year.
But we took it out.
But I think, Jamie, you took it out, right? And also,
walk up.
Scoreboard.
Scoreboard in the budget,
Scoreboard was
yes,
in the
no?
budget for next year, but we took it out. And even if we could get it, isn't it 6 months out that it
Yeah.
would take on a boat somewhere? So,
Probably only 8 to 12 weeks.
okay, there you go.
Sorry.
So, sorry, did I just hear Jamie say there's money in
This year.
budget this year to cover the replacement?
Mhm.
So that was just to make this crystal clear, my understanding is that the scoreboard problem is gonna be solved with this year's budget. Because of some. That at least was what Megan understands too. So if that changes, I think everyone would like to know, because if we live another year without this, it is embarrassing to be out there watching sport. Anyway, sorry for the, that is the athletic committee. We haven't had tons of meetings, but it's definitely, those have been our focus and kind of what we zeroed in on as far as helping Megan.
Thank you. Any other committees? Linda, were you?
Yeah, I was actually on the Dresden Athletic Funding Committee back in 2011, so.
Ooh, there you go.
I save everything, as you all know. So if you want any notes on that, I can probably
Anything.
just rustle up the final, and just might give you some of
Sure.
these. Thank you.
Trying to get that out of the basement.
Yeah.
Turning to Jay.
All right. Well, since our last meeting, I know I shared this with one of the other boards, but I'll share it here officially. Julie Stevenson, Jess Eakin, and I accepted the National Blue Ribbon Schools Award on behalf of High High at a ceremony in DC at the beginning of the month. And it was a 2-day program that included PD session, professional development sessions for all the educators that were there, in addition to the ceremony itself. It was great because it gave us an opportunity to share with, there were nearly 300 other school recipients there, and we got to both share and commiserate. It sounds like many of the people that we were there with were experiencing some of the same difficulties that we have been. Everything from surviving the pandemic to dealing with staff shortages were topics that a lot of these sessions centered on. The next week, Julie invited me to meet with the staff, who is currently working on NEASC accreditation, which involves a pretty significant strategic planning and visioning portion. And we felt that the amount of input we've had from the staff in the strategic planning process to date has been less than we'd hoped for. And so we wanted to make an effort to involve more teacher voice and staff voice. And so I gave a fairly brief overview, but then we invited each of the groups to look at the work that's been done so far. And at the high school, both CPP and coordinators reviewed it. Julie created a survey instrument for them, and then it went to the departments so that a broader section of staff could provide that input. And then Julie and I had a chance to debrief today. I think those surveys have been up for over 2 weeks at this point. And so a lot of great feedback. Some of the stuff is really pretty easy to answer. There's some concern about format and so forth, and we know it's in very rough form right now. But there were some questions about some of the content. There's some identification of things that seem to be contradictory. And so I'll be sharing all of that with the steering committee and with the subcommittees so we can go back and just double check. And there are even some suggestions for things you might want to add. There were a lot of positive comments. People really appreciated the alignment of the portrait of a graduate with the existing mission of the high school. There is a significant amount of alignment, which I guess could be predictable, but the four skills that we're hoping that students leave us with were completely analogous to the mission statement of HHS right now. So kind of neat that might end up expanding to the entire school system. Really what we're hoping to do next is to summarize that content, get it out for further digestion by the committees. And it's also my understanding that Tim and Nissa had a chance to meet with the RMS staff about the draft as it stands now, and then that leaves the elementary schools. So I'll be talking with the Ray School staff at a meeting tomorrow, just to sort of give them the same sort of broad brush description of the work that's out there and invite them as well to provide feedback. And then the missing piece that I think we really need to collect is feedback from our students. And so I think once we have that, then we're ready to then take it out to the public for broader input. And we're hopeful that by the end of January, we can accomplish that and get to work on the strategy development that will operationalize the goals that we're developing now. So that's what we've been up to on that front. I will be not difficult to reach, difficult to see in this area, because I think central office staff will be helping over at the Ray School, where we've got we have some coverage issues as far as administration at the elementary school, and so I want to thank Robin. Rhett has helped out, and we'll be sort of rotating through to help support the Ray School for the foreseeable future.
Was there someone that's left, or just
No one's left.
sick,
We have a family medical situation
Got it.
that's created a vacancy, not a vacancy, but just a need for some support.
Okay. Linda.
Yeah, Jay, I didn't get a chance to share with you, but with the board, I talked with council leadership, and we won't be looking at the whole strategic plan. I think that's a pretty heavy lift for the students to look at right now. But there's plans to look at portrait of a graduate, and they'll be doing that in committees, which is smaller groups. So we'll have some feedback to share with the board.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Robin.
Okay, well, we've been doing lots of curriculum work, as you know. I met with the librarians last week, the school counselors, the world language teachers, and then next week we have our K through 12 meeting with all of the language arts teachers, and we'll be looking at some statewide testing data and analyzing that for the past 3 years. We'll also be working on the high school English curriculum the following week. So that will continue, and I've been doing a lot of work recently with the title grants and trying to get funding for us for some coaching, professional development over the summer, and we have already received some for the one-day coaching, so that's continuing, and then just continuing to look at those funds and see how we can utilize those out of the schools. So that's it for me tonight.
Thank you, Robin. Any comments or questions?
Thank you.
Jamie? Thank you. Any comments or questions for Jamie? Okay, we don't have a need for non-public tonight. So at this point, is there anyone in the public that has any comments? Seeing none, moving on. If you have any agenda items you want to add to the December agenda, let me know. It's going to be pretty full with the budget discussion, so if you can hold off for January, please do. It says our next meeting is at 6 p.m. on December 20th. Is that correct?
That's the budget presentation.
Just, we're expecting a longer meeting, so we're starting earlier?
As we typically do with the budget, yeah.
Okay. So just mark your calendar, 6 p.m. On December 20th.
Was it 20?
Mm-hmm.
December 20th.
Okay, so,
The 13th is a Norwich meeting. Sorry.
I don't have to go to those, so I
Who
didn't
does
know.
with
I apologize.
So great. At this point, if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn. Ben,
Move to adjourn the meeting at 8:49 PM.
second, Lisa. Neil.
Aurelia, yes?
Hartman, yes.
Christie, yes?
Connell, yes.
Vaughn, yes. Johnson, yes.
Keeney, yes.
Nelson, yes?
Sherman, yes.
Barry, yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Do we all want to do a holiday get-together, maybe after the,
After the 20th?
I don't know how long, Kim, this will force you to keep it short.